Can we take our seats, please, so we can begin? Huh? Start you? Do you want me to just stand to the side now? I'll just, huh?
No frowning.
It's very dangerous.
So,
I don't know how to do this for you to.
okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. If you could take your seats, we're going to get started. Welcome, students, alumni, and honored guests. I'd like to open this evening by recognizing our board members in attendance. These individuals help me and my team every day with their time and expertise. They are always willing to take my calls and help me make our program even better each year. Please hold your applause to the end, and I want to recognize all these special people. First, I want to recognize a very special lady and my boss, Ms. Nancy Conrad, founder and chairman of the Conrad Foundation. You'll be hearing more from her later and a very great story about Pete Conrad. Gwen Griffin, our vice chairman and CEO of Griffin Communications Group, also a great friend and mentor. Joe Rothenberg, our president and aerospace consultant, former associate administrator of the NASA Science Directorate and director of NASA Goddard Research Center in Maryland. Ron Gross, our board secretary and chairman of Gross Family Holdings in New York City. Jack Green, a partner at law firm Loeb & Loeb in New York City. Song Young, a partner at law firm McKenna Long in Washington, D.C. And Chris Stott, chairman and CEO of Mansat Corporation on the Isle of Man. As you can see, they come from all over the world, so please give them a big, warm welcome. I'd like to also introduce and thank our staff who have worked together tirelessly to put together this summit. And if you're here, if you please stand up. Carrie Taylor, our Education and Outreach Director. Constance Zahner, our Event Director. And Alexandria Pearson, the Program Coordinator. I'd also like to thank our partners here at JSC and at Space Center Houston for all of their support over the months leading up to the summit. This week, we are here to develop and celebrate innovative thinking and entrepreneurial spirit of the 2012-2013 Spirit of Innovation Challenge participants. I salute you with this quote by famed innovator Steve Jobs. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some of you may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to introduce Nancy Conrad.
Boy, it's dangerous up here. There's wires everywhere. One of the teachers asked me earlier this evening where you were all having your mocktails and yummy goodies to talk about Pete. So that's exactly what I want to do this evening. You're in a place now where there's a tremendous Pete presence here. His suit that he wore on the lunar surface is here. The Gemini vehicle that he went with Dick Gordon on is here. It was the first EVA, extravehicular activity in space. The Russians had done a spacewalk, so we figured we better do it too. And so this is really a repository of memorabilia that is very essential to the life of Pete Conrad and very central to the extraordinary things that he accomplished. But you know, Pete's story isn't all, you know, space and being a rock star and a big celebrity and all that stuff. He was a kid that had a problem. He couldn't read or spell. He had a heck of a time with it. And so he was at Haverford School, which is why I asked Haverford today to read the notes on the board. And he wasn't passing. He was failing everything. And they thought he was stupid, so they expelled him. And his mother took him to this little school in upstate New York, and he repeated the 11th grade. And about the same time, he was learning how to fly. And Pete soloed when he was 16 years old. And so it became kind of something in his mind clicked that if he could learn all of those checklists and all of the data he needed to know to fly, maybe he could take that same system and do his schoolwork the same way. And the headmaster at this school looked at this kid and saw something in him, and he took him under his wing, and Pete ended up with a scholarship to Princeton. So he goes to Princeton, he still can't read or spell, and he becomes an aeronautical engineer. And when I wrote his book, I thought, well, of course he did. It makes perfect sense. You don't have to read or spell very much to be an aeronautical engineer. So then he went on to apply for the space program, and he ended up in what is called the Next 9. It was the Apollo program. And Pete flew 4 flights in space. He flew Gemini 5, and you've seen the Gemini vehicles. I mean, that was 8 days in a garbage can, basically. And then he flew Gemini 11, and there's a mock-up of it in the where you were touring. And then Pete and Al Bean, who you will meet Saturday night, they went to the moon together with Dick Gordon. It was an all-Navy crew to the moon, did a pinpoint landing, which we'll talk about on Saturday night. And then he flew Skylab, which was our first space station, and you saw that here as well. And it was damaged at launch, and Pete and his crewmate, Dr. Joe Kerwin, who was the first medical doctor in space, rescued the lab, and for that Pete was awarded a Congressional Space Medal of Honor. So then Pete ended up, he retired from NASA, and he really tried to fly a desk. He was working for a guy by the name of Bill Daniels. Bill is the father of cable television, and the company that Bill started really sort of became Time Warner. And Pete was the chief technology officer for that company. It was American Television, cable television. And it wasn't his thing. He really was a tremendously authentic human being, and so he was very honest and said, you know, this is not for me. It's not my world. I like airplanes, and I like to fly. So he ended up at McDonnell Douglas. And some years later, Pete began to fly a experimental rocket at White Sands Missile Range. And when I say fly, he was the fastest mouse in the South. It was all done with computers, a whole lot different than flying Saturn V's. And it was a reusable launch vehicle. So from that, he created 4 companies working on the commercialization of space. What Branson, Musk, and Bezos are doing today, Pete and his team were doing in the early 90s, and unfortunately he was killed in 1999 in an accident. So all of this happened because an educator took a kid under his wing, and the kid got a moonshot. So that's what we do. We take you under our wing, your teachers and coaches take you under their wing, and we want you to have your moonshot, and that's why you're here. And you've come through a tremendous amount of effort and work, and your teachers and your parents and your schools have really embraced you just as Pete's headmaster embraced him. So we bow deeply to the coaches and to the parents and to the schools who help support and help you to get your moonshot. So we welcome you, and that's the Pete story. I will tell you one other quick thing. When Scott Parazinski was talking today about taking risk and things like that, and I couldn't help but think about one of Pete's quotes. He said, well, there are old pilots and there are bold pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots. So preparation is everything. So we welcome you. This is the first time we have had this many countries come into our competition, 44 countries. 2 teams came in, international, from Shanghai and 1 from Singapore, and we welcome you. Welcome. So once again, I want to bow again to Megan and Lockheed Martin for their tremendous help and their sponsorship that has been wonderful. And welcome David Fisher and Regina Schofield from Battelle. This is our first year with Battelle as one of our partners. And you've been a tremendous help to us and a great asset to this competition. Battelle, as you may know, their tagline is the business of innovation. They brought you things like Xerox. PepsiCo Foundation and Mondelez have continued to be partners with us. And we welcome Richard Black, and we welcome Todd Abraham from Mondelez. Richard Black is with PepsiCo. This is Richard's 2nd year. Skybox Imaging and their out-of-the-box scholarship. I love that. It was Tom Ingersoll, who's the president and also a member of our board. We sat around talking one day, and he said, well, gee, I don't know what else this product can do. And I said, well, why don't you ask our kids? So that's how we got the Skybox out-of-the-box challenge. And then I want to also welcome the IPO, the Intellectual Property Owners Education Foundation, for their generous grant. We very much appreciate it. If you want to see who else contributes to this program, it's on page 8 of your programs. And we just thank you all because we're all here because of you guys. And so thank you. So I want to give a shout out and a thank you to Mike Kincaid, who is with us this evening. Where? Hey, Mike. Mike is the Director of External Relations here at JSC, and he and his team have worked with us every step of the way in pulling this incredible week together. Mike, we truly appreciate your support. Thank you very much. And you know, we're all here for you. I mean, this is all about the students. So now we've got a very special guest tonight, and I'm excited to introduce you to our special guest, and I'm going to read you some things about his story. His name is Captain Dan Burbank. He has a degree in electrical engineering from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy and a master's in aeronautical science from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Dan, I don't know if you know, but Pete used to be on the board of Embry-Riddle. Dan attended Navy flight training at Pensacola and has logged more than 4,000 flight hours, primarily in Coast Guard helicopters, and he's flown more than 2,000 missions, including more than 300 search and rescue missions. Wow. He was selected as an astronaut in 1996 and as a CAPCOM, or a capsule communicator, for both Space Shuttle and Space Station missions. He has made 3 trips into space and lived on board ISS from November 2011 to April of 2012. That is really long-duration space flight. Pete was up there 28 days on Skylab, and that was a really big deal then. To being one of the smart and adventurous dude, Dan is a member of the All Astronauts band Max Q, and they are going to be entertaining you tonight. So please give it up for Dan. And he's in his blues. Woohoo.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you tonight and to be in the presence of so much mental horsepower. And I'd like to congratulate all the students who were innovative enough to be selected among so many people that competed for this. And on behalf of NASA, on behalf of the Johnson Space Center, I'd like you to welcome you to Johnson Space Center, the hub of human spaceflight exploration for NASA and for America, and also welcome you here to the Space Center Houston, which is our official visitor center. we're very proud of what we do. We're very proud of what we do here at NASA. Very proud of what we do at the Johnson Space Center. There's an awful lot that's going on here that goes beyond the things that you're going to see during your tours at Johnson Space Center. I kind of caution you, as you look at all the impressive hardware, as you look at the simulators, as you see the Saturn V rocket out by the entrance to Johnson Space Center, those things, as impressive as they are, and as impressive as the International Space Station is, it is nothing compared to the impressiveness of the people that made all that possible. The rocket fuel of the space program has nothing to do with the things that we put in the giant rockets to push us uphill. It's the rocket fuel that consists of the brain power, the people that make all that possible. So the engineering, the scientists, all the work that goes into this. Human spaceflight, it turns out, is a really tough thing to do. When Pete Conrad was walking on the moon and his colleagues were paving the way for the things that we do right now, I was about 8 or 9 years old in those days, and it was really impressive. It was impressive for the entire world to see the things that were going on. But I think for all of us growing up at that point, we thought that by now, certainly I thought that by now, we would have thousands of people living in space, hundreds of people living on the moon, already be on our way to Mars and all those things. Well, it turns out space flight's a little bit harder than that. But right now, I think we are really at the cusp where people your age, by the time you're my age, are going to see those things finally come to fruition. The propulsion technology, the engineering science that goes into how to keep humans safe and productive in space in this really hazardous environment, the material science that's involved in protecting the heat shield of the spaceships that re-enter Earth's atmosphere, all of those things, all those critical components for space flight and space exploration are right at the ragged edge of what human beings are capable of doing at this stage. And it's really important for NASA, it's really important for the governments of the space and the space agencies around the world to take the lessons that they learn in exploring space and apply those as best they can to make it safe. And as soon as it's safe enough, we need to give that technology to the companies on the ground that can make that a more routine business, that can make space flight something that can be possible for hundreds and thousands of people. And the possibility of making that happen is really going to rest on the shoulders of people just like you. So I salute you for all the things you've done so far. If you are interested in joining this business, I highly encourage it. If you want to fly in space, nothing beats it, in my opinion. But if you want to build the rockets and build the spaceships and do all those kinds of things, that's really probably the most important thing that we need. And what I'd like to do is, if we have a couple minutes, I'll show you just a brief video that kind of encapsulates the mission that we did to Space Station back in November to spring of 2011, or 2012 rather. So it's kind of hard to compress 6 months worth of activity down, but I would say this: the hardest part of getting to space is the trip uphill, and for the crews, that really involves all the work that goes into learning what you need to learn to be able to fly in space, learning about the Russian language, learning about the rocket technology, learning about the systems on board Space Station, keeping them functioning, and so forth. And eventually, it's time to climb aboard a rocket, and I launched with my 2 crewmates, Anatoly Ivanishin and Anton Shkaplerov, on a very, very snowy day that we would never launch a Coast Guard helicopter in, back in November. And we launched in a Soyuz, and after 2 days of catching up to the space station, we docked. And we climbed out of this tiny little Soyuz and joined this incredibly expansive million-pound space station that, as you probably know, is bigger than a football field. Anyways, we got to spend a lot of time up there doing the work that Space Station was built for. Having done a couple of shuttle missions before, to be able to actually do the science that we built Station for was really meaningful. The human research, understanding how human physiology adapts to space, that's a key component of what NASA does on Space Station, and it's critical for us to understand the things that we need to understand so that we can leave low Earth orbit. It's a really interesting thing when you get there. This never gets old. There's no floors or ceilings. Up and down are meaningless terms in space. And you wake up in the morning and you fly like Superman down the length of this stack, and you'll find yourself down the cupola looking at the Earth and 2,000 miles in all directions beneath you. You'll sometimes have enough time to experiment with conservation of rotational momentum. And you'll do a lot of work on station, keeping the station functioning. And that's an additional component that goes beyond the kinds of things that we as American space flyers learned on the space shuttle. So keeping the 1 million pounds of hardware happy and functioning is a critical component of this. So if you like to tinker, that's a good thing if you want to fly in space. Anton and Oleg Kononenko did a spacewalk a spacewalk on the outside of the Russian segment. We had lots of visiting vehicles, cargo vehicles that brought up cargo. In this case, that was a European automated transfer vehicle. We got treated to a wonderful site just before Christmas of 2011 when a comet that was not supposed to have survived a close pass to the sun came up and just was a spectacular, bright beacon in the night that we would see on a daily basis for a couple of weeks, actually. But looking at Earth from space, it's kind of ironic. You only really see evidence of human presence on this planet at night when the lights are on and the sun is off, so to speak. At the end of 6 months, it's time to pass the torch to the next crew, and Oleg Kononenko relieves me of command. Anton and Anatoly and I climb aboard the Soyuz and have a very exciting ride home in a capsule, very different than a space shuttle. Very energetic, I guess I'd put it that way. And you can see even right up to landing, if you could call it that, it's pretty impressive. But it is robust, and actually capsules are probably the safest, at least in our current understanding of the technology, safest way to get humans to and from space station, or at least something small. If it's small, even if it's a winged vehicle, like one of the companies is working on right now, if it's small enough to put at the top of the stack, then it allows you to, in the case of a launch problem on the way uphill, allows you to pull the crew free of potentially a catastrophic situation on the rocket. So launching your crew in a small vehicle is a good thing to do. So the neat thing right now, a lot of people when I go to give talks, and I think a lot of us are experiencing this, there's kind of this perception that with the retiring of the space shuttle that we're retiring the space program, and that is anything but the truth. In fact, the space shuttle, to its credit, finally did the thing that it was exquisitely well designed to do, and that is to provide the unique capability of building this million-pound space station called the International Space Station. But a vehicle with wings and a tail is destined to be a vehicle that you'd use close to planet Earth. And if our destinations are the moon, asteroids, and Mars, and they are, then we need a vehicle that's appropriate for that. So we retired the space shuttle. It allows NASA to turn its attention and its funding to building a big heavy lift rocket called the Space Launch System, and in a deep space capable smaller vehicle like a capsule called the MPCV or Orion, and that'll allow us to do the missions that we want to do, the missions that the lessons we're learning on space station will allow us to do. At the same time, NASA is now turning over the routine access to and from space station from the surface of the Earth to several companies that are working really hard right now to build that capability. So this is a very bright time. It's a wonderful time for anybody that's interested in the space program, and I think, like I say, that this is probably finally the dawning of the space age as we, when I was a youngster, dreamed it would be. I do have one other quick thing I'd like to introduce, and I think we've sent down a video from the crew on board Space Station. So Chris Hadfield, Tom Marshburn, Chris Cassidy, and 3 cosmonauts that are on board Space Station right now are busy at work all day, mostly every day, and they do get a little bit of time at the window, but they did manage to take a few minutes of their time, I think Tom and Chris Hadfield, to just say a few words to you.
Hi, I'm Tom Marshburn, and this is Chris Hadfield. On behalf of the Expedition 34 crew on board the International Space Station, we want to welcome all of you to the 2013 Conrad Spirit of Innovation Summit.
Congratulations to you on being selected as finalists. We commend you on applying your creativity and your ingenuity to develop new technologies and ideas to address some of our most pressing issues back on Earth.
Up here, we have an incredible national laboratory where the engines of innovation can reach new potential with help from future pioneers like you.
And like you, we are pushing new boundaries and making game-changing progress in the issues that we all face globally.
The world needs great thinkers, but more importantly, we need great doers. By being selected as finalists, it's clear you are doers. You exemplify what's great about the innovation generation movement. Your products have great potential, and this competition provides momentum for your ideas to take that next step to implementation.
We know you've had quite a journey over the past few months developing your products and your presentations. You're off to a great start, and you're in the right place. NASA Johnson Space Center has a wonderful, long-standing reputation as an innovative and forward-thinking research center committed to improving life on Earth and exploring the outer reaches of space.
So we encourage you to continue to excel in your education and pursue your goals with a relentless passion. We wish each and every one of you great success and continued inspiration.
Thank you for letting us be a part of your Spirit of Innovation Challenge Summit. And good luck in the competition.
Did you guys notice Chris Hadfield's watch spinning around on his arm the whole time? It was kind of a trip. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, so just to echo what Chris said at the end there, I would just say one more time. When I was a youngster, when Pete was walking on the moon and we were doing all those great things in the early days of the space program, for me personally, that made me interested in space. It did not, however, make me want to be an astronaut, and it did not, however, make me want to become an engineer and work at NASA. And that's because even at the tender age of 8 or 9, it was something that I never could imagine I could do. And kind of in hindsight, it wasn't until many years later when I was already an engineer and a pilot and doing other things, and another Coast Guard pilot applied for and was selected for NASA, that it even occurred to me to come here and try, or at least to try to come here and work. So I hope that all of you are taking to heart the lesson that you're learning by virtue of being chosen to be here today and to be here during this week. And I hope that you put more credence in your own abilities and put more faith in your own ability to change the world and do great things than I did at that age. Luckily, eventually I came around. But there are lots and lots of things that we need to do, and we need an awful lot of bright, innovative people. And I can think of no better group right now in the Houston area than the group that's right here. So you are our future, and I wish you all the very best.
Whoa. Just came out. Thank you so much, Dan. We'd like to give you this amazing, fabulous token of our appreciation, and we look forward to hearing your tunes. And thank you very much for your presentation. It's really great. Thank you. So, okay, so I know you're all hungry, and dinner's on, right? The rodeo's begun. Okay, enjoy your dinner, and then we're going to have some music and some fun, and thank you very much once again for being here. See you soon.